Alara stood in the village square, her fingers twisting the hem of her faded dress. The morning sun reflected on the cobblestones, but its warmth could not reach her heart. Around her, laughter rang out, not the cheerful kind, but the sharp, biting kind that stung like cold wind. Her family stood nearby, their faces painted with mockery, each word they spoke carving deeper into her pride. "Still alone, Alara?" her older sister called, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Another spring passes, and yet no husband to your name. Surely the mountain men have better sense than to look at you." Her cheeks burned, but she held her head high. She had learned long ago that tears would only feed their amusement. Her mother's lips pressed into a thin line, hiding the disdain that crept into her eyes, while her brothers snickered behind her back. The villagers, sensing the tension, watched quietly, some smiling, some whispering, all complicit in the ritual of humiliation that had followed her since childhood. Alara's gaze drifted toward the mountains that loomed beyond the village. Their peaks were crowned with mist, mysterious and unreachable. Stories about the mountains had filled her ears since she was a child. Legends of lost fortunes, ancient curses, and the solitary man who dwelled somewhere among the cliffs. The mountain man, as the villagers called him, had never been seen, yet his presence haunted their conversations. Some said he was cursed, that every soul who approached his domain vanished or returned broken. Others whispered that he was unimaginably wealthy, a recluse who collected treasures from the hidden corners of the world. Alara shook off the thought. Legends were only stories, after all. Yet a small spark of curiosity ignited inside her. She longed for a life beyond the endless ridicule, beyond the shadow of a family that had never celebrated her worth. "You should be grateful, Alara," her sister continued, her words venomous yet polite. "Grateful that at least we care enough to remind you of your failures. Some families ignore daughters like you entirely." Alara's jaw tightened. She had endured this her entire life. The constant comparisons to the married women. The endless questions about why she remained alone. Her heart ached with a longing she could never fully name. She wanted respect, admiration, perhaps love, but most of all, she wanted freedom from the suffocating expectations that had clouded every day of her life. The crowd dispersed slowly, leaving her standing alone. The sunlight grew softer as afternoon approached, stretching the shadows across the cobblestones. She turned toward the edge of the village, toward the dense forest that grew at the foot of the mountains. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying a chill that seemed alive, almost sentient. Her feet moved of their own accord, taking her past the last cottages and into the shadows of the forest. Every step felt like leaving her old life behind, a small act of rebellion against the mocking voices that clung to her like chains. The trees grew taller, their trunks thick and knotted, their branches forming arches that filtered the sunlight into fragmented beams. The air smelled of earth and pine, wild and free in a way the village could never be. Alara paused beside a stream, the water glinting silver as it danced over stones. She bent down, letting the cool liquid run through her fingers. In the solitude, she allowed herself to breathe, to imagine a life where no one judged her, where she could walk without shame or fear. It was then that she sensed it. A gaze, unyielding and intense, watching her from the edge of the forest. She froze, her heart beating faster, though the presence did not feel threatening. It was curious, observant, almost expectant. She scanned the shadows, finding only the shifting leaves, the dark trunks, and the sun-dappled ground. "Who's there?" she called softly, her voice betraying only a hint of tremor. No answer came. Only the wind replied, carrying the faint rustle of movement somewhere deeper within the woods. Alara's pulse quickened, a mixture of fear and intrigue pulling at her senses. Her life in the village had been predictable. suffocating. And now, suddenly, it seemed the unknown called to her, promising something she had only dared dream of. By the time the sun began to sink behind the mountains, she realized she had wandered far from the village. The forest thickened, and the path was barely visible beneath layers of fallen leaves. Shadows stretched long, merging with the undergrowth, creating shapes that flickered at the edges of her vision. Her breath came in quiet gasps, yet she could not bring herself to turn back. There was a pull she could not resist, as if the forest itself urged her onward. Then, through the gathering dusk, a figure appeared. At first, it seemed a trick of the fading light, a shadow among shadows. But as it stepped closer, the shape became clearer, tall, imposing, draped in dark fabrics that moved with an almost unnatural grace. His eyes glimmered like firelight, sharp and observing, yet not cruel. Every step he took carried a weight of authority, a presence that commanded attention without a word. "Ilara," he said softly, his voice carrying through the trees like a melody, both strange and familiar. Her heart stuttered. Who are you?" she whispered, though a part of her already knew the answer. Stories of the mountain man had filled her childhood, yet nothing had prepared her for the reality of him standing before her. "I am Kale," he said. And in that name there was a gravity, a history, a sense of inevitability. "I have watched you. You have endured much. You have patience, kindness, and a strength that your village has failed to recognize." Ilara's mind spun. She wanted to speak, to ask how he knew her, but her tongue felt heavy, as if the air around her had thickened. The forest seemed to lean closer, listening, alive with the tension between them. Kale took another step forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "Come with me," he said. "I can show you a life beyond mockery, beyond their small minds. You deserve more than what they offer you." She hesitated, fear and hope warring within her. Could she trust this man? Could anyone truly see her, understand her, after a lifetime of ridicule? Yet there was something in his gaze, something unwavering, commanding, yet strangely tender, that made her chest ache with longing. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of pine and distant snow, brushing her hair across her face. For the first time in her life, she felt the possibility of escape, the glimmer of a life where she was valued, not mocked. I don't know," she whispered. Kale's voice softened. "You need not answer now. But the choice is yours. Stay, and remain as you are, or follow me, and discover what lies beyond these mountains." Ilara looked back toward the village, faint smoke curling from chimneys, the distant echoes of laughter still lingering. She thought of her family, of the life she had always known, and of the endless cycle of humiliation she had endured. Her heart thudded in her chest. The forest around her seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Finally, she lifted her chin, drawing a deep breath. "I will follow you," she said, her voice steady, carrying more resolve than she had felt in years. Kale inclined his head, a small, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "Then, let us go," he said. "The mountains await, and with them, the life you were always meant to live." As they walked toward the rising peaks, shadows lengthened, the forest swallowing their forms. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying an echo of old legends and new beginnings. And far below, the village continued unaware, mocking absent truths. While the girl they had scorned stepped into a destiny shaped by mountains, mystery, and a man whose eyes seemed to hold the weight of centuries. The first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, and Kale looked down at Ilara with a mixture of curiosity and something deeper, something neither had yet named. In the distance, the mountains rose like ancient sentinels, holding secrets of wealth, power, and perhaps redemption. Yet for all their grandeur, it was the quiet strength of the girl beside him that would shape the fate of the mountains themselves. And for the first time, Elara felt the stirrings of hope, the kind that promised her life would never again belong to anyone else but her own choices. The path up the mountain was steep and narrow, lined with jagged rocks and mist that seemed to swirl like living shadows. Elara followed Kael, her hands brushing against the rough bark of ancient trees as the wind whispered through the branches. Every step was a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The village, with its mocking laughter, felt like a distant memory, and yet the weight of her past made her chest ache. Kael walked ahead with quiet confidence. His dark cloak flapped in the wind, and his eyes constantly scanned the forest, as if expecting an unseen threat. Despite his imposing presence, there was a calmness in him that drew Elara forward. She felt both intimidated and safe in his company, a strange contradiction she had never experienced before. "This path is not easy," Kael said without turning, his voice low and steady. "Many who try to reach my home give up halfway, but you have already shown strength by leaving the life you knew." Elara swallowed hard. I never thought I had strength," she admitted. "I've always been small, unnoticed, laughed at." Her voice faltered. Kael stopped suddenly and turned to her. His gaze was intense, like he was looking into the depths of her soul. "Strength is not always visible," he said softly. "It is measured by the courage to step into the unknown. You have that, Elara. That is why you are here." She felt a warmth in her chest, a quiet pride she had never allowed herself to feel. For the first time, someone had recognized her, not for her failures, but for her hidden resilience. Yet fear still lingered, fear of the unknown, fear of trusting someone she barely knew, fear that the mountain's secrets might be more dangerous than she imagined. The mist thickened as they climbed higher, and the forest opened to a clearing. There, perched on the edge of a cliff, was Kael's home, a sprawling estate built from dark stone and timber, both elegant and formidable. Towers rose like sentinels against the sky, and the windows glowed with a warm light that seemed to promise safety. Around the estate, gardens of strange and exotic plants thrived, their leaves shimmering as if kissed by magic. Elara's breath caught. She had never seen anything so grand, yet so isolated. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Kael inclined his head, a small, private smile tugging at his lips. "Beauty can exist even in solitude," he said, "but it is the heart that truly gives life to a place. And perhaps one day, you will help breathe that life into mine." The words stirred something within her. She wanted to believe them, yet part of her remained cautious. She had been abandoned, ridiculed, and overlooked for so long that hope felt fragile. Still, she followed him through the massive wooden doors into the warmth of the estate. Inside, the house was a maze of high ceilings, dark wood, and flickering torchlight. Every corner seemed to hold a story, every shadow a memory. Kael led her to a room overlooking the valley, where she could see the village below and the mountains stretching endlessly beyond. "You will stay here," he said, gesturing to a simple yet elegant chamber. "It is yours for as long as you wish. Eat, rest, and regain your strength. Tomorrow, I will show you the heart of the mountain." Elara nodded, still absorbing the grandeur of her surroundings. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, but words failed her. She felt both overwhelmed and strangely at peace, like she had stepped into a story meant only for her. That night, she lay in the soft bed, staring at the ceiling. Thoughts raced through her mind. Who was Kael, really? Why had he chosen her? And what dangers lurked in the shadows of the mountains? Sleep came fitfully, but her dreams were vivid. She saw herself walking among ancient halls, her hand in Kael's, as whispers of power, wealth, and old curses swirled around them. In the dream, the mountains seemed alive, watching, testing, judging her worth. Morning came with a golden light that bathed the estate in warmth. Kael awaited her in the great hall, his expression calm but alert. You slept well? Um, um, news, he asked, though the tone suggested more than a simple question. Yes, she said, sitting at the long table, though the words felt inadequate. But I still feel uncertain. About you. About this place. About everything. Kael studied her quietly. Uncertainty is natural, he said finally. The unknown is never comfortable, but it is also the beginning of transformation. You came here not to escape, but to discover your strength, your choices, your destiny. As they walked through the estate, Kael showed her gardens where plants glowed faintly under the sun, libraries filled with books older than the village itself, and hallways lined with artifacts of unknown origin. Each room seemed alive with stories, and each step reminded Ilara of how small her previous world had been. You have been mocked, overlooked, ignored, Kael said, as they paused before a large window overlooking a cliff. And yet, you carry within you a courage few possess. That is why I watched you. That is why I chose you. Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She wanted to question him, to ask why her presence mattered, but the sincerity in his eyes silenced her. Instead, she found herself simply listening, absorbing the truth she had never dared imagine. Someone saw her, really saw her, and valued her. Days passed, and with each passing day, Kael's lessons began. He taught her about the mountain, about its hidden paths and ancient protections. He spoke of the old curse on his family, a curse that had haunted generations, leaving betrayals, losses, and heartbreak in its wake. He did not reveal everything at once, only hints and fragments, letting her curiosity grow like fire in the dark. Ilara listened, learned, and began to understand the power dynamics at play. Kael was not just wealthy. He was responsible for forces she could barely comprehend. And yet, he did not belittle her ignorance. He guided her patiently, respecting her limits while challenging her mind. One evening, as snow began to fall softly outside, Kael led her to the edge of a cliff. The valley stretched beneath them, blanketed in white, and the mountains rose like silent guardians. The wind bit at their faces, but neither flinched. Look at this, Kael said. All of this could be taken in an instant by those who seek only wealth or power. Yet the mountain does not care for greed. It chooses those who have strength and courage. Ilara shivered, partly from cold, partly from awe. And you? You chose me? She asked, barely audible over the wind. Kael's gaze softened, his eyes reflecting the glint of the snow below. I chose you not for wealth, not for beauty, but for something far rarer. Your heart, your courage, your spirit. You are not like those who fear the unknown or bow to ridicule. You face it. That is why you belong here. Her chest tightened. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever acknowledged the quiet resilience that had carried her through ridicule and shame. And yet, even as pride swelled, fear lingered. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself to embrace this new life? This new destiny? Before she could respond, a distant sound echoed across the valley, a low, ominous hum, almost like a chant. Kael's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening. You see that? He asked. There are those who do not wish us well. The mountains have long memories, and some who bear grudges still walk the shadows. Ilara's heart pounded. The beauty and wonder of the mountains suddenly felt fragile, threatened. Who is it? She whispered. Kael did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached out and took her hand, a gesture of both protection and connection. We will face it together, he said, his voice steady but firm. But you must understand, the life you have chosen is not without danger, yet I will not let harm come to you. Ilara's fear mingled with a strange thrill. Danger had always been abstract, confined to stories and warnings. Now it was real, tangible, and she was at the center of it. And yet, for the first time, she felt alive. As they stood together, the wind carrying the snow across the cliff, a shadow moved in the distance, just beyond the edge of the valley. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. Kale's grip tightened around her hand, his eyes narrowing. "Someone watches us," he said, "and they are not friendly." Ilara's heart raced. She wanted to run, to hide, yet her feet remained planted. She realized something profound. She was no longer the girl who had trembled under her family's mockery. She was here by choice, facing the unknown with courage and with the man who had chosen her. The snow swirled around them, blurring the world into white and shadow. And in that moment, Ilara understood the truth of the mountains. Beauty, power, danger, and destiny were intertwined, and she had stepped fully into their realm. The shadow moved closer, silent and purposeful. Kale's eyes followed it, and his jaw set with determination. "We must be ready," he said. Kale's eyes was, "We must be ready, for the mountain has many secrets, and some will not welcome us into its heart." Ilara's hand tightened around his. "I'm ready," she whispered, though her heart fluttered with fear and anticipation. The mountains rose like ancient sentinels, holding their secrets. And somewhere in the distance, a presence watched, waiting for the moment to strike. Ilara realized then that her journey was only beginning, and that the bond forming between her and Kale would be tested in ways she could not yet imagine. The wind howled through the mountain cliffs as Ilara and Kale stood at the edge of the plateau. The shadowed figure that had been watching them all day now moved closer, silent and deliberate. It was the first real threat they had faced since she had arrived, and Ilara felt a mix of fear and determination swelling inside her. Kale's hand tightened around hers. "Stay close," he said. His eyes, usually calm, were sharp now, scanning every movement in the dim light. "They will try to test us, to see if you are strong enough. Are you ready?" Ilara nodded, though her heart pounded in her chest. "I will try. I will not run." The figure stepped fully into view. A man, tall and clad in dark clothing, emerged from the shadows, his expression hard and unreadable. His presence radiated hostility, but it was more than that. There was history here, old grudges carried over decades, threats that had survived generations. "You have chosen poorly, Kale," the stranger said, his voice echoing across the mountains. "The mountain does not forgive, and the girl, she does not belong here." Kale's gaze sharpened. "She is not just any girl," he said. "She is brave, loyal, and wise. She belongs here more than you can understand." The stranger sneered, but it did not reach his eyes. "We shall see," he said, and moved closer, his steps careful and measured. Ilara's grip on Kale's hand tightened. "Who is he?" "An old rival," Kale said. "He believes he has claim to the mountain's secrets and fortunes, but he underestimates you and me." The tension was thick, almost tangible, as the three faced each other. The snow swirled, falling in quiet flakes that softened the edges of the confrontation. Yet beneath the stillness was a current of power and challenge, the kind Ilara had never felt before in her quiet village life. Kale stepped forward, putting himself slightly in front of her. "You will not take her from me," he said, voice low but firm. "Not her courage, not her heart, not her place here." The stranger laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "And if I try?" Kale's eyes glowed with intensity. A sudden wind swept across the plateau, and the mountains seemed to answer him. Rocks trembled, and snow swirled in a small whirlwind around them. The stranger faltered for a moment, clearly unnerved by the display of power. Elara watched in awe. She had seen Kale's strength before, his knowledge of the mountain's secrets, but this was something deeper, older, something that felt alive. And yet, it was not only Kale who held power. She felt it too, a courage and clarity rising within her, born of the life she had endured, the humiliation she had survived, and the hope she now carried. "I will help," she said quietly, her voice steady. Kale looked at her, surprise flickering across his features. "Elara, I will not let fear rule me," she continued. "Not anymore. We face this together." Kale's expression softened, and he nodded. "Very well," he said. "Then let them see that courage can stand against fear, and heart against greed." The stranger's lips tightened, sensing the change in her, sensing the bond that had formed between the two of them. "You are strong," he admitted, almost grudgingly. "But the mountain tests all strength." For a long moment, silence stretched across the plateau, broken only by the whistling wind. Then the stranger stepped forward again, more cautiously this time, and Kale and Elara matched each movement. Their steps synchronized, their resolve mirrored in each other's eyes. Suddenly, the snow beneath them shifted. A hidden ledge revealed itself, and the stranger stumbled for a brief moment. Kale's hand shot out, steadying Elara, and together they moved with fluid precision, the mountain guiding their steps, as if acknowledging their right to be there. Elara's heart raced, not with fear, but with exhilaration. She realized something profound. This mountain, this place of mystery and power, had accepted her. The lessons, the challenges, the danger, they were all shaping her into someone who could stand beside Kale. Not behind him, not beneath him, but as an equal. The stranger recovered, his face pale but determined. "You may have survived this," he said, "but the mountain does not forget, and neither do I." Kale's eyes darkened. "Then we shall be ready. And if you return, you will find us stronger than before." The stranger hesitated, then slowly retreated, melting into the shadows of the cliffside. Elara watched him go, her chest still heaving from the tension, and realized how much she had changed. She no longer felt small, no longer felt powerless. The girl who had been mocked daily in her village had faced danger and stood her ground. Kale turned to her, his expression softening. "You have done well," he said. "Not many could face fear and hold their courage like that. You have earned your place here, Elara." She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, not from fear, but from relief, pride, and something else. Something deeper. I never thought I could," she whispered. "You can," Kale said firmly, taking her hands in his. "You always could. You just needed to see it for yourself." The wind died down, and the snow settled softly around them. The plateau seemed still, almost peaceful after the storm of tension. For the first time, Elara felt a calm she had never known. A sense that she belonged not just in the mountains, not just with Kale, but within herself. Over the next days, life in the estate settled into a rhythm that was both new and comforting. Kale taught her about the mountains, about the hidden paths, and ancient protections that had kept the estate safe for centuries. He showed her the gardens where enchanted plants grew, where their flowers glowed faintly under the moonlight, and the libraries filled with books older than any she had seen. Elara learned quickly, her mind sharp and curious. But more than that, she learned about Kale, his past, his fears, his longing for redemption. Each story he told, each memory he shared, drew them closer together. And she shared her own past. The pain of ridicule and isolation, and the small, quiet victories that had carried her this far. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Kale led her to the highest tower of the estate. From there, The valley stretched endlessly below, the village a distant memory, and the mountains rose in silent majesty. "You see all of this?" Cale asked, his hand brushing against hers. "It is beautiful, yes, but beauty is nothing without heart, without courage, without love." Ilara turned to him, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "I see it now," she said softly. "And I see you, not just the mountain man, not just the legend, but the man who trusted me, who believed in me." Cale's gaze held hers, intense and unwavering. "And I see you, Ilara. Not the girl mocked by her family, not the one who doubted herself, but the woman who stands beside me now, unafraid and strong." Her chest swelled with emotion. For so long, she had yearned for respect, for recognition, for love. And now, here it was not given, not forced, but earned, shared, and true. As the night settled over the mountains, a quiet peace enveloped them. The threats had not vanished entirely. The mountains still held secrets and dangers. But for the first time, Ilara felt ready. She was no longer the girl from the village square, trembling under ridicule. She was part of a story much larger, a story of courage, heart, and destiny. Cale reached out, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle but deliberate. "The mountain has many tests still," he said. "But together, we can face anything." Ilara smiled, feeling warmth and strength in equal measure. "Yes," she said. "Together." The stars blinked awake above them, cold and distant, yet somehow welcoming. The wind whispered through the towers and gardens, carrying the promise of new beginnings. The mountains stood eternal, witnesses to courage, heart, and love found where it had been least expected. And in that moment, Ilara knew the truth she had always longed for. She was no longer defined by the mockery of others, by fear or doubt. She had found her place, her strength, and a man who saw her for who she truly was. The mountains had chosen her, but more importantly, she had chosen herself. Yet even as she held Cale's hand, a small flicker of movement caught her eye in the distance, a shadow watching silently from the cliffs. The mountains held secrets, yes, but Ilara understood now that she was ready. Whatever came, she would face it, not as the girl who had been mocked, but as the woman who had been chosen and who had chosen herself.